So it really hit me today while getting groceries how expensive things are getting. I got 3 bags of groceries and it was $105.
So new economic research suggests that the poor and the middle class here in the United States have virtually stopped buying things.
In 2025, millions of Americans are facing a survival challenge. The cost of living is no longer increasing. It has exploded. What's scarier? Everything. So, what happened? Who has pulled down the living standards of Americans so low? And most importantly, why do most of us only realize this when it's too late? Let's get started. The facts in this video might surprise you. Adjusted for inflation, Americans today earn almost as much as they did in 1979. The only difference is, everything you need to live has increased by over 70%. It sounds like a joke, but it's a slap in the face to the working class in 2025. In the old days, a stable job was enough to support the whole family. Now, a stable job is only enough to feed the refrigerator for a week. A man once said, "In the old days, a paycheck was what kept me grounded. Now it's like a rubber band. It'll snap no matter how you pull it." Median wages remained stagnant for 40 years, while houses appreciated like gold. Cars are increasing in value like collectibles. Medical examinations are priced like a charity auction. Going to the supermarket, a zero bag of groceries looks no different from children's snacks. My paycheck isn't enough for the month now, sometimes not even for a week. But the truth is, Americans aren't working less. It's not that someone is extravagant. And it's even less true that the new generation is lazy. But the reality is that the system changes before we even realize it. Businesses are increasing profits faster than wages. Automation technology is driving wages down even further. Being transferred abroad reduces the value of domestic labor. And most importantly, the credit system compensates for low wages. When credit cards become a temporary lifeline, companies have no reason to raise wages. It all adds up to a cycle. You do more, get paid more, receive less. A somewhat humorous type of economic evolution. It was so funny I had to laugh to ease the bitterness. And which generation do you think is most strongly affected? Perhaps the middle-aged generation, as they are the generation squeezed between two responsibilities. Their children need support because starting salaries are low. Parents need care because medical costs are increasing. They stood in the middle, like an old iron pillar supporting both ends of the bridge. The bridge is getting heavier. The column wasn't reinforced. It's no surprise that many men over 50 say their paycheck now feels like gas money and just enough to get by, rather than a tool for building a future. A comment I read that I think anyone who hears it will be choked up. My rent takes up my entire paycheck. So where am I supposed to get the money for gas, food, and unexpected expenses? This question isn't just his. It's a question for millions of families. If paychecks have been frozen for 40 years, if all basic expenses are rising uncontrollably, who should we blame? Or is the problem with the way the economy itself operates? And more importantly, when the paycheck runs out, what happens to the bills you can't avoid? $410,000. That's the median home price. 6 times the median income. It sounds like a simple mathematical equation. But Americans in 2025 understand clearly there's nothing simple about the home, a symbol of stability, now being as expensive as a rare vintage car. In the past, a small house in an ordinary neighborhood was something a worker could aim for after a few years of saving. Now, the same house looks like a museum exhibit. It looks good, but you can't touch it. A one-bedroom apartment in many states costs about the same as a paycheck. Rent money becomes a black hole, swallowing up all your income before you even step foot in the supermarket. In Florida or Texas, home insurance is rising like a rocket. Many families give up, not because they don't want to stay, but because it feels like they're paying to insure the fear of losing their own home. People often blame the subsequent buyer, the previous buyer, this generation or that generation. But if you look closer, you'll see 15 years of housing shortage, Too little supply for a population that needs more. Investors buy affordable homes to rent out, turning starter homes into rental inventory. Interest rates jump from 3% to 7%, a mild deterrent, but a direct blow to first-time buyers. Property taxes are rising unreasonably. In some places, viewers are saying they've increased by 500%. A number that sounds like a typo, but is a real tragedy. All of this combined creates a complete trap. House prices rise, people are excluded from the market, and home ownership gradually becomes a game for a very narrow class. Someone commented, "I'll retire to the forest for peace." And yet, property taxes increased by 500% this year. Reading it just makes me sigh. Even the forest couldn't save it. Retirees, those who worked for 30-40 years and should now be living comfortably. But they struggle with taxes, insurance, repairs, and management fees. In old age, it's no longer the next chapter. It turned into the next chapter, but it cost more than the previous one. Middle-aged singles, especially men, look at the housing market and realize they will likely rent for the rest of their lives. It's not because they lack effort, but because this game isn't designed for them. And what about the younger generation? Simply put, it was eliminated right at the parking lot. A house used to be the biggest asset in a person's life. Now it's like a huge loan that you have to ask permission to be allowed to repay. So the question is, if housing, a basic need, has become a luxury, what model of stability can we still believe in? And if the roof is so difficult to keep up, what will happen to the expenses you can't avoid? The answer lies in the next section, where Americans realize the shock is even heavier than the rent. There's something strange happening in America in 2025. Homes are expensive, rent is painful, but it's the electricity bills that are taking away the calm of many middle-aged men. A person in Texas shared that last summer. Their June bill was $560, July was $650, and by August, the number on the app showing the forecast exceeded $2,000. It's not a villa, it's not a swimming pool, it's just an ordinary house with an air conditioner that's been running for 20 years. Many Americans say that in 2025, the electricity bill increased so quickly, it was as if it had to power an entire city. Water, gas, internet, everything is priced based on how much you can pay. We'll charge you accordingly. One viewer stated bluntly, "My electricity bill is even higher than the payments for 2 cars." And the most ironic paradox? Even those who switch to electric cars to save on gas are shaking their heads. Electricity prices are rising faster than gas prices. That's when you realize, in the battle against the cost of living, utilities are no longer a service. They became silent predators, appearing once a month, always on time, and never apologizing. We're still used to blaming the weather. It's hotter, the bill is higher. That makes sense. But it's not enough. Viewers said a simple but very poignant sentence. AI data centers are consuming electricity and clean water, and that cost ultimately gets passed on to the people. Plus, outdated infrastructure, high transmission fees, like VIP service fees. Utilities are region exclusive. You can't switch providers like you can switch phone networks. The tiered pricing system hits hard during the hot season, just when people have no other choice. To put it mildly, the utility doesn't force you. It's just, you have nowhere to run. Many families have to decide, turn on the air conditioning or buy more food. A calculation that sounds absurd, yet happens every day. The elderly open the windows at night to save electricity. Dangerous? Yes. But when the bills are higher than your pension, you don't have many options left. What about rented houses? They can't replace the air conditioner, they can't install solar panels, and they can't switch to energy-efficient appliances. That means they have to pay for the performance of others. And it's the same old story. The paycheck is stagnant. The bills are piling up like a runaway train. In the past, electricity bills were an expense. Now, it's like an unwilling investment in warmth and coolness. Two things that should be as cheap as air. So the question arises, why does a basic need like electricity and water become a burden greater than both a car and insurance? Are we paying for energy or for the gaps in the system that no one is fixing? And if utilities have become the new predators, what happens when we enter the place everyone fears most? The supermarket checkout. There's a moment that so many Americans are experiencing, standing in the middle of the supermarket, looking at a shopping cart with only a few basic items, and wondering, why does this cost $40? A man simply said, I saved up a little money. 2 days later, I had to withdraw it to buy food. It's not a personal tragedy. That's the general image of America in 2025. Food prices are no longer increasing. It's escalating, as if racing against people's wallets. Food prices consistently increase by 2 to 3% each year, but they never return to their previous levels. Working-class areas become food deserts, where supermarkets leaving only convenience stores and fast food. Many people over 55 eat 1 to 2 meals a day, cut back on meat, cut back on vegetables, and even skip lunch. How ironic. In a country with an abundance of food, people still have to count every egg. It's not that people are eating more. It's not a catastrophic decline in production. And it's not like the supplier suddenly became difficult. The bigger picture is this. Just 4 corporations dominate most of the meat and processing market. Shipping, fuel, and labor costs all added to the final price. The supply chain's long-term labor shortage is driving up warehouse maintenance costs. Rural areas with few workers and abandoned supermarkets create food deserts. And there's an unbelievable irony. Processed food is cheaper than fresh food. A paradox that leaves the poor with enough calories but lacking in nutrition. A kind of full stomach but weak body. The retirees said they had to switch from a breakfast of eggs and meat to cheap sandwiches. And single people choose instant noodles over steak. Not because of preference, but because the price of a steak is equal to a whole tank of gas. Doctors warn heart disease, diabetes, and metabolic disorders are not increasing because people are eating more. They just eat cheaper. And the cheaper option is something the body pays for in the long run. The worst pain isn't the price of food. The most painful thing is the feeling of losing the right to choose. What to eat, how much to eat, how to eat. It's all determined by the bill, no longer by oneself. So the question here is, why would a wealthy nation like the US turn food, the most basic necessity, into a luxury for the working class? And if people have to sacrifice even their food, what will be sacrificed next? Because when food, housing, and utilities are all eating away at your wallet, Americans only have one last lifeline. And that life raft, as many people say, is debt. There was a comment from a viewer that left me speechless for a few seconds. No chains, just contracts. No owners, just debt. They made the cage invisible. No strong images needed. Just that one sentence is enough to understand that debt in the US in 2025 is no longer an option. It has become a part of survival. Americans currently carry over $1.2 trillion in credit card debt. The number is so large, it sounds like the GDP of a small country. Interest rates of 22%, 25%, even 29%. Just owe for 6 months, and the interest will grow faster than you can try to pay it off. And the saddest part, Americans don't use credit cards to fly to Maui or go shopping on weekends. They used it to buy gas, groceries, fill gaps in rent, or pay for unexpected medical bills. A life raft, but with spikes. To put it mildly, the current economic system relies on debt spending. If people don't use cards, don't buy on installment, don't take out consumer loans, many links in this economy will slow down. And that's why, when prices increase, people use debt to compensate. He doesn't increase, people use debt to compensate. When an emergency occurs, the debt continues to be offset. Debt becomes a patch to cover income gaps. But the more you cover it, the bigger the hole gets. A loop you don't know how to escape. The most painful thing here isn't the money, but it's the feeling that your paycheck has already been deducted before you receive it. The interest payments come as regularly as clockwork. The principle is still the same as the day you first swiped your card. Many people who were once middle class now identify themselves as working poor, working hard but no longer able to climb the ladder. It's not because of a lack of determination, but because every month a piece of my paycheck gets eaten up by interest. One person shared, "I don't live beyond my means. My resources are constantly dwindling." That's a saying that represents millions of people. In the past, borrowing was called a financial tool. Now, it's like a treadmill. You run continuously, but the finish line never gets any closer. So, in a context where salaries aren't increasing, costs are constantly rising, and debt is following like a shadow. Is debt helping people survive, or is it keeping them exactly where the system wants them to be? And if the middle class has to rely on debt to survive, what does the American dream even mean anymore? Because after all, housing, electricity bills, food, debt, there's one thing that haunts Americans more than any bill: the feeling that effort is no longer proportional to results. There's a saying that sounds simple, but weighs as heavy as a lifetime. I don't recall it ever being easy, but it wasn't designed to break you like this. An American wrote that, and tens of thousands of other Americans agreed, not out of sadness, but because they saw themselves in it. The 45-65 age group grew up with the belief that no one needed to teach them. Work hard. Life gets better. A good job, a roof over their heads, a small savings, and a future for their children. A tacit agreement between the workers and the system. But in 2025 America, many people suddenly realized they work harder than their parents. They try harder than their parents. But they are struggling more than their parents. The phrase, "the American dream is dead," is no longer a lament. It became a kind of reality check. And you know what? The hidden cause behind this silent collapse, it's not due to a single factor, but rather a chain of dominoes falling in the correct order. The cost of living has increased faster than wages for 4 decades. Debt becomes a future installment plan instead of genuine accumulation. Healthcare and housing costs are burdening the middle class, which is the backbone of America. Food, electricity, water, and insurance prices are rising without looking back. And most importantly, the system was not redesigned for the new era. It just keeps operating and pushing the pressure down onto the workers as if they are the economy's shock absorbers. A gentle but painful truth. America is becoming more expensive faster than workers can adapt. What hurts many people the most isn't the bills, but it's the feeling of being betrayed by old beliefs. They don't trust the media, don't trust the financial system, don't believe the promises, just work hard and things will get better. Because they did. Work your whole life. But instead of becoming more stable, they found themselves swimming upstream. Many people worry about retirement, medical. Children today don't even have a life that's half as good as the previous generations, fearing they will spend their entire lives just to pay for the most basic things. In the past, the American dream was the path to success. Now it's like an elevator stuck between the 20th and 21st floors. The lights are still on, the music is still playing, but it's not going up anymore. So the question is, if hard work no longer guarantees a better life, does the implicit agreement between the people and the system still hold? And if millions of Americans start asking this question at the same time, what happens next? The moment many Americans stopped and realized, perhaps the problem wasn't with them, but with how the game was designed. What if tens of millions of Americans said, enough is enough, and closed their wallets? A question that sounds like a joke, but if you think about it long enough, it's more chilling than your July electricity bill. And just that one sentence was enough to make the entire US economy falter. In many recent surveys, the middle class, especially those over 45, has almost stopped buying non-essential items. No more new TVs, no more vehicle upgrades, no more weekend trips. One study even stated bluntly, the poor and middle class in America have almost stopped consuming. It's not due to discipline. It's not due to a minimalist philosophy of life, but because their paycheck is only enough to pay for the things that will help them survive until the end of the month. Something few people like to mention, the American economy runs on consumer spending. The US GDP is almost entirely driven by consumption. About 70% of economic strength comes from people opening their wallets. So imagine, if the middle class reduces spending by 10%, many retail sectors will falter. If it decreases by 20%, a portion of the labour market will be shaken. If 50 million people simultaneously close their wallets, the economy will be like a pickup truck running out of oil. It won't stall immediately, but it will heat up minute by minute. Inflation can really come down. But the price can sometimes be a series of small businesses that don't survive. A picture no one wants to see. You can imagine, the supermarket is less crowded. The shopping mall parking lot has more empty spaces. And consumer goods manufacturers are starting to sweat bullets. It's not because the people are resisting, they're just exhausted. Middle-aged people are starting to prioritize rent, electricity bill, medication costs, basic food allowance, and things that were once easy to buy disappeared from the shopping cart as a way of self-preservation. One viewer commented very aptly, "They say the consumer is king. Then why does the king feel like a servant?" A sarcastic remark that sounds painful. If people stop consuming, the economy will be under pressure. But on the contrary, is this also the time when the system is forced to re-evaluate how it treats workers? If the people's wallets are the engine, is it time for them to try? Easing off the accelerator? And what if millions of Americans realize they had more rights than they thought? Because this is the premise that leads to the most important realization, something more and more Americans are saying out loud. The feeling that the problem was never with them, but with how the game is designed. Finally, looking at the big picture from paychecks, housing, utilities, and food to debt, we see a simple but hard to swallow truth. Americans aren't declining because they're getting worse, but because the cost of living has risen disproportionately to their efforts. And if you meet, or anyone else, is feeling tired of trying just a little bit harder, maybe it's not that we're getting weaker. It's just that the times have changed into a much more difficult version. Now I'd like to hear your perspective. In your opinion, what is the biggest factor contributing to the high cost of living in the United States in 2025? And what do you think needs to change first? Please share in the comments so others know they're not the only ones feeling this way. If you want to see more straightforward, calm, and unvarnished analyses like this, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next video. This video is for analytical purposes only. It does not constitute financial, policy, or investment advice. All views presented are based on public data and reflect the reality shared by many, and are not intended to attack any organization or individual. Thank you for staying with me until the end. See you in the next videos.